Hello, Jesse. You are live with Promise and Alyssa. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I don't know if you heard us, but we were saying you put on here two different topics, and we'd rather stick, if you're okay with it, stick with the topic where you explain to us why you believe in a God.
Sure. Yeah. The reason I put two is just because I think I had previously called and we were talking about that and it ended, and I was invited to call back, but it had been a few weeks ago. So yeah, I can go with whichever you guys prefer. So I think the second one was why I believe in God, which is
and I'll ask real quick which God it is that you believe in.
The Christian God.
Okay, cool. All right, yeah, let's hear it.
The reason I believe in God is I feel like it makes more sense if we just observe, right? I think the scientific approach kind of is like observation, and it's that argument which goes like we've never seen anything come into being by itself, and so obviously we exist. So then, where would we? You know what I mean? Where did we come from, basically? But there's a lot of other reasons too. I think it's like an accumulative case. It's not that one day I was just like, oh, where did we come from? But as time passes, you strengthen your faith through different, a lot of other different evidences, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay, a couple of follow-up questions. I'll start. Let's go to where you just left off. So is it faith or is it evidence that you believe? Like, why do you believe?
I think
to me, those are pretty much in conflict with each other.
I think it's faith and evidence. I think the evidence takes you up to a certain point, and then after that, it is faith. I can't say God is 100% proven. So I do admit that there is faith involved in it, and I think that's why it's called faith. You have to believe that God exists, and then in Christianity that he's good.
Why is that good to use faith to fill in the gaps where we don't have good answers?
Because I think at a certain point, the leap is big enough or small enough to make. I don't think that gap between evidence and faith is that wide. And for different people, it might, be different. But for me, it's not that big of a gap to make to say I have faith in God.
Okay, so you think do you think there's compelling evidence specifically for the Christian God then?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so you're starting with the whole argument, something can't come from nothing. Right. And first of all, I don't believe that anything came from nothing. I don't know what nothing even is. I don't know what the origins of the universe are, or if there even are origins of this universe. There are things that we just don't know. And so what I do as an agnostic atheist, or you can just say atheist because I don't believe there are any gods, is I just honestly say, I don't know. It would be cool if we find out someday, but I do not know. And I'm not willing to make that massive leap to therefore an entire being, an entity. And not only that, one that claims to be personal must be the explanation. Because to me, that feels like filling in a gap for the discomfort of not knowing.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of like a mutual seeking. Like the Bible says that God seeks those. Everyone, he wishes everyone, but he also calls us to seek him. So I could sit at the I don't know, but I also feel like I am called to seek out answers. And the more I seek out, the more it is confirmed for me.
That's confirmation bias.
Go ahead.
That's confirmation bias. The more you seek for something that you already have started to believe in, the more you're going to find of it. Of course, if I think about, having a black car and then I go out driving, I'm going to see a bunch of black cars and be like, wow, look at all the other black cars. That's what happens. But you specifically went with Christianity and you mentioned the Bible saying something. Why do you care what the Bible says any more than any other religious text, including ones you haven't even read and you don't know what's in them? Why is this the one that you've gone with? And why is this one what you think is true?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess at first I start with like, is there a God? And like I said, for me, considering like even history of mankind, like how as far back as we can go, you know, in the written record, man has always believed in God. And it's kind of, it's wild that as far back as we can go, the closest we can get to our, the dawn of mankind, man believed they were created. And you have to think like, why was that, you know? But besides moving past that step and being like, okay, now that I believe that God is the most likely, what God is it, or has God made himself known to people? To me, the most compelling case is the Christian God, or the Abrahamic faith, where the Abrahamic faith stem from, like, you know, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. And I think he's had the greatest influence on the world through through those paths. I do believe Jesus was a real person. And I also see just the case against Christ. Like, to me, there's society is just so against Christ. It almost makes you be like, why is society so against Christ?
I mean, society
so
has also been against Hitler. So I don't think society being against something is very compelling reason to believe that it's true and or good. So, again, I feel like I asked, and I'm still unclear on your answer as to why you said that you do like it and that's what you do favor, but why the Christian God specifically? Why do you believe that it's true? What's your evidence that it is true? Because you started with this idea that you think it's most likely that there is a God. Okay, I don't. I don't see good reason to believe that there is, so I don't believe there is. But now you think that that's the most likely answer, and you think that it's this specific God. And I'm still struggling to understand how you got there, other than, you know, saying, oh, well, it's the most popular, which is not even, I mean, you can, yes, Abrahamic gods, but even still, then you have Hinduism, which is really, really popular as well. So I'm still struggling to understand what made you feel so compelled to follow Christianity specifically, to the point that you're risking pissing off all these other gods.
Again, and I have to say, it's not a single piece, you know, like, not one single thing that can be dismissed. It's like I said, cumulative. So yeah, you mentioned like popularity, you know, Christianity is huge. Historical, I think there's historical evidence, like a lot of the claims of the Bible, even at the point where they weren't by, let's say, historians or archaeologists or whatever, believed to be true. In a lot of cases, those sites or those people do end up being real. So it's
Can you give me some examples?
To me. Sure, like let's say King David. They just found a coin that says House of David, right? And so that coin shows that King David must have been a real person when
and in comic books, but in comic books, they also refer to people that were actually presidents. But that doesn't mean, you know, there can be some there can be some true things. What I care about are the supernatural claims, which I have seen zero evidence of any of those being true.
Right. And I just want to point out that was just one example off top. You know, like another example would be Pontius Pilate, or like, you know, it talks about the wall of the city of Jericho, or things like that. You know, I mean, if people want to, they can look into, you know, how many things in the Bible ended up being proven true. But
a little bit of my background, Jesse, I went to Israel. I've been to all of these places that you're talking about, or the claimed places. A lot of times, what's really wild is they'll take you and they'll be like, here's where Jesus was born. Well, also over here, but it also maybe was over here, and each place you're going to pay to get it. You know what I mean? And like each church has approved a different spot. So I understand all of that. I'm aware. I'm asking, like, what's the compelling evidence that this is more true than anything else that is true? Because you would think that there would be some kind of evidence for it for you to devote your whole life to. Whereas if somebody calls in and they're Muslim, they're also going to tell me about different historical sites and different things that's in their religious text that's true. If somebody calls in to talk to us about, you know, we call them, what does Matt call them? Like the bong hitters, where they talk about the different dimensions and all of this, and they have their reasons. But I'm looking for like, why should I believe you over any of these other claims?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just telling you, the prompt is, why do I believe? You know what I mean? So I'm just telling you, I believe because it's the most grounded in historical. It's the most historical narrative, actually. You know, accurately historical, like you said, most popular.
It's not.
It's
That's
affected
it's
the
not
world
true.
the most. It has the most people against it, which is like it has the most haters, I guess
That's
you could say.
also not
Quote,
true.
it's the most historical.
Neither of those things are
and then
true.
you talk about. Hold on, sorry. Hold on. And then you talk about Islam and all that, right? Yeah, Islam actually believes in the Bible. That's what's crazy. That's why I grouped them kind of together because if I remember correctly, the Quran or whatever says that the Bible is reliable. So yes, we disagree with the Prophet Muhammad, whether he was sent by God, but ultimately we do believe there is a God, and I think that's what divides like theists versus atheists is that you try to pit us against each other by saying, well, you know, I don't believe in 1,000 gods. You just believe in one less or 1,000 less, whatever. But it's like, that's not a proper analogy.
Jesse.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to just say no one who is an atheist is trying to pin any religion against each other. The only people who do that are other religious people.
Like, no, not that you're trying to pit religions against. It's the comedian. This comedian, he has a line. He's like, well, there's 1,000 gods that I don't believe in.
You're referring to Ricky Gervais, and neither Alyssa nor I are Ricky Gervais. You're talking to us right now, and we're not saying those things. So Ricky was trying to communicate a point because somebody was asking, how can you not believe? And so to try to help this person understand what disbelief feels like, it feels the same to us as it feels to you to not believe all these other things. You just are having belief in this one other God. So I understand that you're trying to find common ground with saying like, oh, you know, Islam believes in the same God, all of that. Great, cool. We have people call in with all kinds of other God claims that are in direct contradiction to your God, who claims that there's only one God. We have pagans that call in that believe in multiple gods. That directly goes against what evangelical Christians tend to claim about their God, which is that he is the only God. So what's the compelling evidence for this God? Because so far I've just heard fallacy after fallacy, which is like, oh, well, there's some true things in this book. Well, there's some true things in Harry Potter. There's some true things in all of my favorite fiction, which is generally what makes them so good, is that there's some fact tied in there. You said, you know, oh, it's been the most popular, but then you also said it's been the most hated, which neither those things have been true at different times. Neither of those things are good reason to believe something as fact. So I'm trying to get to the point of why anyone should believe this as fact.
Yeah.
And maybe Alyssa has some more clear questions. Sorry, I've just been taking up all this time.
Sure.
No, I mean, I feel similarly to you. I think that having these conversations and relying purely on faith, it always reminds me of when you use the example of a pink unicorn in the room. Like if I'm telling you there's a pink unicorn in the room and I have faith that it's there, like, you know, you, Jesse, can't tell me that that's not true. And then we're at a stalemate. I'm telling you it is, you know? So they're like, if you're trying to create a more compelling argument, it has to go beyond just having this natural feeling of, I don't know, natural is not really the right word, but having this feeling of faith, because that's not, and it's not enough. Sorry, go ahead.
And I'm not saying it's a feeling. I do feel like, well, I do think that there are, like I said, cases, for example, like, you know, and I don't want to, I know you guys probably don't want to get into it, like the Kalam cosmological argument and all that, but I'll ask you, do you guys think Jesus was a real person?
I think Jesus may have been a real person. I have seen zero, mostly I just don't care, because I've seen zero evidence that any supernatural being has existed, much less Jesus being a supernatural being, like the son of a God. No evidence of being raised from the dead after 3 days and still being alive to this day in some capacity. No evidence of all these different supernatural claims that have been made. That's what I care about, because I think it makes sense that there could have been somebody, an apocalyptic preacher that went around and said some stuff. Some things were cool. Some stuff was really wild for the time, and some stuff was just kind of like what you hear people on the street corner saying when they've had certain substances, and that could have gone along and helped add more to this other story that had already been started. That makes a lot of sense to me. I can see how that would happen. I see how we do that to this day on TikTok. Something will start from a few years ago, and then it will continue and turn into a whole legend thing. So I don't have any problem with the idea that maybe Jesus was a real person. And I don't have have a problem with the idea that Jesus was a God. I just have a problem with the fact that there's no evidence pointing to that being true.
Yeah, I think I would go as far as saying that there is more evidence now that there are no gods that exist, or if there are gods that exist, they aren't very good ones. I would say there's more evidence to support that than there is to support that there are any gods and that any of them are good people who care about the things that they allegedly created.
Yeah. Well, what I would say to that is like the consensus, at least among historians, is that Jesus was a real person. And I think that counts for a lot. So he was really on this earth.
It's actually still pretty divided, but yes, continue.
I would say it's not divided. That's the consensus. And you could look up Bart Ehrman, who's an expert in this, that the historical consensus is that Jesus was real. And I don't want to lose that point.
Well, Jesus could have been real and schizophrenic. He could have been real and like, you know what I mean? Like, actually, I shouldn't even say schizophrenic because I actually don't know enough about what that diagnosis is to say that it's aligned at all with what goes on in the Bible. But he could have been someone who was a magician. Like, what's the difference between Jesus and a magician?
And we don't have, the Bible actually doesn't tell us that much about Jesus. In fact, a lot of it is contradictory. We have other people telling stories. We don't have any firsthand account from Jesus. So we really don't know much about this alleged character. So, but I'm curious where you're going with this, because I'm still trying to get to the part of a God.
Okay. Well, yeah. So Jesus was real, right? And like C.S. Lewis would say, like he was either a liar, a lunatic, or Lord, right? So Jesus was real. The consensus is that he was real.
Jesse, I've read all of C.S. Lewis's stuff. Or there's another idea here. Or Jesus wasn't any of those things, and other people were liars, and they were saying stuff about him that wasn't true and making things up. Or Jesus was multiple different characters that they put into one character, or multiple different real people that they put into one character. There's so many other options. And I know it sounds like C.S. Lewis says these like exciting things to quote, but if you sit down and actually think about them, they fall apart really quickly. So yes, Jesus easily could have been a liar. Most people I know lie more than they don't. So that's an easy one. Could have been a liar. Could have been a lunatic. You're out there eating locusts in the desert and you're saying that this guy's going to show up. That already makes me think that the guy announcing him is a lunatic. So what do we think about the guy that he's announcing? There's all kinds of things here where it's like, yeah, those are, if there is a point to be made here, it's like, yeah, those things seem much more likely than an entire deity existing. We have evidence of lunatics existing. We have evidence of liars existing. I don't have evidence of a deity existing.
Okay. Well, so I want to just backtrack. So, okay, we can agree that Jesus was a real person.
I don't, Jesse, I don't know. I don't know if Jesse was I don't know if Jesus was a real person. Maybe not. I don't know. So I can't agree, but I'm not disagreeing with you either. Sure. But so then can you admit that you would have to disagree with the historical consensus? No, because I just don't know. I don't know. So you don't know if the consensus is that Jesus existed? No, but I want to pin you down on this. Do you disagree that the historical consensus is that Jesus existed?
Even if he did exist, it doesn't
mean... who you're
mean...
listening to. And I also don't care because I don't know if Jesus existed or not, regardless of what consensus you're going with. I don't know if Jesus was a real person or not. And even the ones that do say, they say he probably was. Scholars that I would give a rat's ass about have said 100% without a doubt Jesus existed. And again, Jesse, you're trying to get away from the fact that we're talking about if Jesus was a deity.
Sorry. Well, do you say that about George Washington, or do you say that about Napoleon, or do you say that about these other people?
Because they're not supernatural claims. Yeah, and we have physical
It's not a
evidence of multiple evidence from multiple accounts over and over again that were at the time of George Washington being alive. The whole Bible is written hundreds of years after Jesus was allegedly around.
Did you know that there's sources outside of the Bible that attest to his existence?
Yes, Jesse, I'm aware of all of this. You know what?
Because you deny that, and you say you don't know.
Because I literally do not know, Jesse. This is called being honest, and it's something that I think you should learn how to do. I do not know if Jesus existed or not. I don't have a way to know that. So stop trying to do this pin me down thing.
That's fine. Okay. Well, all I'm saying is you're not being consistent, because then you'll believe in other historical figures. That's all I don't
believe in other historical figures, Jesse. I don't believe in them.
In Napoleon you don't believe in Alexander the Great. You don't believe in Julius Caesar.
No, I don't
believe
in them. I trust that hopefully my history books are somewhat right, but I do not hinge my life on the existence of Alexander the Great. It's really not going to impact my day-to-day life. If Jesus existed and was the son of a god, then I think that would impact my life, and I'd like to know. So please get to the part where you tell us how you know that Jesus was the son of a god and exists today and resurrected from the dead.
No, but I don't know why you're resisting so hard. All I'm trying to point out is that he was a real person. I'm not even getting to that part yet, and you're resisting so.
It's not resisting. So I've just been honest with you. I really don't know one way or the other. This is just called being honest, and I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, yes, I know Jesus existed, because that would be arrogant and absurd, and it would be a lie. So can you continue to get to the part where you let us know how you know that there's a God?
Sure, but I think that's dishonest, but it's fine. But anyway, I didn't say I know there's a God, like I said. I have faith that there's a God because I feel like the evidence points towards him. And when you ask me about Jesus, I believe in Jesus.
Why do you pay attention to evidence? Why do you need faith if there's evidence?
Because there's a difference between evidence and proof, right? Like evidence can point you towards something, even though you don't have the 100% proof. You know what I mean?
Then why do you need faith? Because I don't need faith to believe that this phone is in my hand. Because here's the evidence. It's there.
That's fine, but that's not the only type of evidence.
At this point, I feel like you are just skirting around the direct questions that are being asked. And it's fine. If you don't have actual evidence to present to us of why we should believe that Jesus is a God, then we can move on with the call.
Yeah. No, well, I was just saying why I believe in Jesus, and I think he's affected the world most than anyone. That's why we still date our time based off of him. And that's why
Jesse, please don't tell me that you're going to go with that. Do you know, please go actually look up why we use AD and BC, because it has nothing to do with anybody actually existing or not. This was a political thing that was started. I can look it up for you right now, but this is like maybe the worst argument you've had so far, and I'm telling you this so that you can go learn and not use this one. There are better arguments, surprisingly, than that. So please don't go that route, because that's going to make you look really silly.
Okay. No problem. But it does stand for before Christ, right?
Yes. And do you want to know why? Do you really want to do this?
Because of Jesus? Because
of the church that had a political agenda at the time. It was created over 500 years after Jesus supposedly lived. And it's also a historically inaccurate date. Likely Jesus was born around 4 or 6 BCE, if he was born. So that's already not starting from the time of, quote, before Christ.
Right. And again, the consensus is that he was born and that he was crucified. And that's why I was stuck on that point, because you keep adding if, because I feel like that's the dishonest part.
But why does that even matter?
I don't care what the consensus is. Like that you are so stuck on that because you don't want to get to proof.
It also, Jesse, doesn't really matter if he doesn't really matter, Jesse, if there was a man named Jesus that was alive at the time that the stories of, like, it doesn't actually matter because it doesn't prove anything beyond the fact that there may have been a person named Jesus who was alive at that period of time. Like, what difference does that make?
Yes.
Like, as far as I'm
and was
concerned, he could
crucified.
have been a charlatan. Yeah, there were so many people crucified. So many people crucified in that period
But
of
why
time.
was he crucified?
So that's
What was he crucified for?
Why were all the
because
other
he was a
people crucified,
political
Jesse?
right.
For claiming to be the Messiah.
He was seen as a
now, why was
political
he
threat.
such a threat? Thank you.
Jesse,
yes, he was seen as a
we
threat
don't
because
know.
he was such a big figure.
We
But-
don't know if that
well, I'm
even
just going
happened,
with-
Jesse. We don't know if that even
I don't
happened.
have a time machine. You're right. I don't have a time machine. You're right. But I'm going to go off of the historical consensus. And if you guys didn't do that research, that's fine. But I'm just going off of what I believe. And this is people who are not Christian will
Jesse,
say that Jesus was a real person who was crucified by the Romans
me-
under Pontius Pilate.
He
Go ahead.
was. Even if
Jesse,
he was, there were other people who were crucified under Pontius Pilate. You have to also understand that religion is a huge political tool.
And-
This is a person. If I take
yes.
the stories at face value, which I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe. If I'm going to take them at face value, because my parents are religious, I know enough of these stories here and there. If I take this at face value, this is a person who created a huge uproar that was against what was going on politically at the time. So they crucified him. This is a person who was creating a counter culture, whatever, counter like movement. And it was not so popular because we know that he had these 12 disciples. He had 12 people who really firmly, allegedly believed in him. That's not that many people. It wasn't like at the time that Jesus was around the entire, how did it what?
How did the whole world become Christian practically? Out of these 12 disciples.
Because it was a political tool.
It
was a political tool.
They killed people, Jesse.
What power
They literally
did they
went
wield?
around, Jesse. They literally went around.
The
They
disciples killed people? No, the disciples were killed. They didn't kill people.
Do you know? Have you ever looked into the Crusades before? No,
we're talking about the disciples. We're not talking about the Crusades. The disciples, Jesus' disciples who were in Judea preaching about Christ under persecution. How did it blow up under persecution? They weren't forcing people to convert.
So, Jesse, do you think that lies never spread? Do you think that compelling stories and emotional stories don't spread? Because they absolutely do. We also just have stories of those stories spreading. So yes, this is a relatively new religion in terms. Jesse, this is a relatively new. I'm in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah,
this is a relatively new religion in terms of the world, in terms of humans. So that is not a good reason to believe something. I want to know if it's true or not. And you telling me that something spread like wildfire 2,000 years ago and then having nothing to show for it now does nothing for me. When your best thing is to say, oh, look at AD and BC, when the days of the week, Thursday is named after a Norse god. Should I start believing in Norse gods now? Like, this is what humans do. We latch onto stories, we make them part of our social norms, part of our culture, and that's how they keep going, and that's how they last. But I don't have any evidence that any Norse gods exist, and I still, at 28 minutes into this phone call, don't have any that Jesus exists as a god. And I'm in the middle of talking, and I don't think you're listening to me if you're talking over me.
Sorry, I felt cut off, so I had to just keep talking.
Well, then we should probably end the call, because if we're at that point where you're not listening to what we have to say, then I think that says a lot.
That's fine, but I do want to just correct, Christianity is not relatively new. It's the extension of Judaism, which is actually really old. It goes back to before Christ, and it goes all the way to Moses in Egypt and all that. And there's evidence of the people of Israel in Egypt.
Christianity is a relatively new religion, which is what we're talking about. And I guarantee you, if we go and start talking about the Old Testament right now, you're going to tell me about how irrelevant it is. So, not a helpful point.
It's not new, because it's what was Jesus? He was a Jew.
Okay, but the reason Christianity exists, the reason that Christianity is Christianity and not Judaism, is because of this entire other book that is new, relatively new.
Right. It's the New Testament based on the Old Testament, which goes back thousands of years BC. He fulfilled the Old Testament.
So
this is the claim, yes, that you have offered no evidence for still.
Well, the evidence is like how he's affected the world. I mean, just look, you are using morals based off of Christianity. I think we take
I'm not.
Christianity for granted in the West.
Jesse, no, I'm not.
Can I tell you? Can I ask you what was the religion of the West? What is the religion of the West?
I don't care because that's not where I get my morality from. And Christians that are moral do not get their morality from that either. Because if you go look at the Bible, it is a piece of shit when it comes to morals.
No, the 10 Commandments are literally posted in Washington, D.C.
I can write the 10 Commandments better in 3 commandments. So don't tell me about the 10 Commandments.
Nobody else did.
I wasn't alive.
Nobody else has, except for Christianity.
Jesse, these arguments are getting
nobody but Christ came up with this. That's what's crazy. And no, because it's like a fish in water. You don't see how much it's affected you.
Jesse,
just because it's affected me doesn't. Just because we're affected by it,
I'm
because
muting
of
him because this is getting old. Okay. We are affected by it every day.
We are affected by it in the same way that we're affected by the patriarchy. I don't want to be, but I am. That doesn't mean that it's true. That doesn't mean that it's right. Like, I don't understand how that's even an argument. And it was driving me nuts to hear you talk about how, because this is a story that everyone knows, that means it's true. I also know the story of Humpty Dumpty. That doesn't mean it's fucking true. What are you talking about? Harry Potter is one of the most popular books of all time. Do you think I think that that's true? They have theme parks all over the world. And we've created entire experiences to make it feel as true as possible. And people still don't think it's true. They understand it's a book. So I'm struggling to understand why you think because something is old. We used to believe that fire was magic. Now we have better answers. So for a really long time, books like the Bible and religions like Christianity provided answers. We don't need those answers anymore.
Do you mind if I wrap this up in one question for him?
Yes.
So Jesse, I'll unmute you in a second. Okay. I assumed. I'll unmute you to answer this question, and then we probably should move on. I would like to know if 2,000 years from now, somehow, I'm not saying I think this is going to happen, this is a hypothetical, if somehow Christianity has been mostly forgotten, and a group of people pick up Harry Potter and decide that they think that this is actual history and this is real and that magic is real. And now the world revolves around this belief and all the things that happen in the Harry Potter books. And it becomes the most popular book. Does that make it true?
No, that does not make it true. And that does not mean that the Bible is Harry Potter. And also the Romans used to practice infanticide, rape, and slavery.
I didn't say it does. Jesse, I didn't say it does. This is not evidence to say, oh, therefore the Bible isn't true. I'm trying to point out that so far you still haven't presented evidence that it is true. Because as you just pointed out, so far the reason you've given us is not a good reason. Because you wouldn't take that if it was,
and I'm not trying
if it was somewhere else.
I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just telling you what I believe and why I believe in God. And the Romans used to practice infanticide, rape, and slavery, and Christ ended it. Christianity ended it. And Christianity is the reason we have foster homes for children who don't have parents. It's the reason we we're against abortion. It's the reason that slavery ended. It is.
Pause your script for just a second. Pause your script for just a second, because first of all, none of that's true. Genocide still happens. Meanwhile, in the Bible, do you know how many babies God killed? Do you know about Psalm, 127:9 or something? Happy is the one who dashes your little ones against the rocks. Do you know that God was actively telling people how to own other human beings as slaves, how to take women as your sex slave, and saying those were his gifts to his soldiers that went out and fought his battles for him? So, no, we're still.
I think that's a false representation. I don't remember any part where he's talking about sex slaves, but
I would love for you to go read your Bible then, because it is all over that thing. Please go read your Bible.
Abolitionist Christian?
Wait, Jesse,
pause
real quick. Pause real quick, Jesse.
Abolitionist Christian.
Jesse,
okay,
pause.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
It is very much in the Bible. And my question to you is, have you read the Bible, the entire Bible?
Yes.
Okay, great. So now to your next thing about the abolitionists. Yes, it is super cool that in history, there have been some Christians that stood up and did the right thing. Do you know that the abolitionists were fighting directly against other Christians who had literally made slave Bibles and printed out the parts of the Bible that tell you how to be a good slave, and they had used that to justify owning other humans? So yes, thankfully, there have been Christians throughout history, and I know some of them again now during this time in history, that will step up and stand up against other Christians who use the same Bible to do all kinds of bullshit. You can use it for both good and bad, which is why I think it's worthless.
It's not, because in the end, the good one, right? So we did end slavery, just like we're trying to end abortion, just like we're trying to fight for the truth. We didn't end slavery, Jesse.
America is, first of all, not the only country in the world. Second of all, we still very much have slavery here. We just call it prison. So no, none of the, like, all of these things that you're citing are, it sounds like talking points that you've taken from somewhere else that you haven't thought through.
I have thought through. And yeah, but you're right. We still have a form of slavery, you're right, like prisons and all that. But it's like, we can both agree that that's wrong. So how's that a case against the Bible?
It's not. You were it's using a case as for you and I being decent human beings, and it's a case for you being better than the religion that you practice, which I'm grateful for.
No, the religion I practice is like, put others before yourself, just like Christ did. And if other people practice it wrong, that's on them. I don't know what to say. But
then what about Paul telling slaves to obey their masters?
Well, there was slavery, I guess. So obey your master. I mean, it ended up being abolished anyway, though, right?
No, it isn't abolished, Jesse, and that didn't help anybody that was alive 2,000 years ago. Why didn't God step in and say, hey, owning humans as slaves is not okay? Why was he able to say, go wear this, don't eat shrimp, but he couldn't do that?
So you want God to just fix everything right away at the snap of your fingers?
No, if he's supposed to be the most powerful, more about people than shrimp.
Yes,
he does care about people. That's why Jesus came and died.
We only had slavery in the way that you're describing it as something commonly practiced in the U.S. until like not that long ago. And Christianity, as in your words, is a very old religion. So if Jesus and Christianity and the Bible abolished slavery, then why did we still have slaves for thousands of years after the Bible?
Because we're in a fallen world, and people. And I'll ask you this:
But didn't Jesus die to save it? Like, wasn't that the whole point?
Yeah,
the whole point. You're telling me in your logic, that Christianity is the most popular religion. It informs all of our beliefs, including promises and myself, and still,
Western society,
it is the reason why slavery ended. Okay, so in Western society, we had slavery through the early 1900s. Why would that be?
Yeah.
If we were so influenced by Christianity that also.
So when America was discovered, between when America was discovered and when it was abolished, that's when we had slavery. So Western society didn't always have slavery. I might be mistaken, but that's what I think. And so, yes, it was around for a little bit.
I think this is not a conversation that you want to have, but let's try to put a bow on all of this.
All right.
Do you think that when God created the universe, meaning he decided how everything would go, do you think that he knew that people were going to sin, that some people would spend their entire lives in slavery, being abused, and then they would go to hell and burn for all of eternity before he created all of them? Do you think he knew those things would happen? And do you think that he knew he was going to need to send his son to die a brutal death because he was going to require blood sacrifice to be the atonement? Do you think God knew all of that before he did it?
No, I don't think that, because I don't think God sends people to hell just for not believing in him.
So you think God is not all-knowing?
No, I just don't think he sends people to hell. So the way you phrased it, I just disagree.
Do you think God knew everything that would do you think God knew that some people would end up in hell for all of eternity before he created them?
I don't even know if he sends people to hell. What is hell?
I didn't say anything. I didn't even use the word sin. Do you think that God knew before he created people, that some of them would spend their entire life suffering. We can even just say on earth, being a slave for their entire life. Do you think he knew that that would happen to some of them before he created them?
Sure, I think he knew that could be a possibility.
No. Did he know or did he not know?
Well, I'm not in God's mind, but I would assume he knew that was a possibility. And that's the most I could say because he created us with free will. So maybe he did know how it would act and how it would turn out, but we don't know the end. So maybe the ends justify the means. I mean, there's people who were in slavery and believe in God. So Harriet Tubman was a slave and she believed in God.
Yes, what a lovely life they had, Jesse. What a lovely life. Oh, great. So he called her to set them free, but didn't do shit for everybody else up until that point. Why did he have to call somebody to set other people free when he could have just decided to put in the Bible, hey, do not ever do this. And then he could have seen into the future where people would take the book and be like, oh, look, there's nothing we can cut out of this to turn into a slave Bible to convince other people that we should keep owning other humans. You're defending the indefensible, and it's really gross.
Not really, because if you practice the etiquette of the Bible, you wouldn't be a cruel slave master. Like you'd have an indentured servant.
Oh, a good slave master, Jesse. Do you want to go be an indentured servant, Jesse? Do you want to go do that?
If I was poor and I couldn't feed myself, yeah, I kind of do that now. I go to my employer and I say, hey, I'll work for you if you pay me.
And you shouldn't have to do that. It's wrong. That's why I'm on the left, too, because I don't think that that's right. I don't think you should be at somebody else's mercy just to survive in life. It's not okay.
No, I'm not saying it's
Jesse, you're defending slavery.
That's how
you're defending slavery.
That's not how God designed the world. That's not how God designed the world. I'll tell you that. God did not design slavery.
He's a shitty designer because it got real fucked up. And he knew that it would when he created it, Jesse. He designed it this way. And he had every opportunity to not do that. He did it anyway.
Who messed up?
God.
Who messed up?
Because God,
we messed up. No, we messed up.
Gotta mute you. Jesse, if God knew before he created Adam and Eve what choices they would make in the garden, then God decided it. He did it. Foreknowledge is not the thing that I will say means God did it all. It's the combination of foreknowledge and being creator. When you know exactly what's going to happen and you're the person that puts it all into motion and decides to go through with it anyways, you did the thing.
So we take no accountability then for our own actions.
Not when there's no free will involved, and there is no free will in that scenario.
I believe I do have free will.
Great. You don't if your God knew everything that you were going to do before he created you. If he knew every hair on your head and he knew exactly what would happen based off of this, and then he made that choice, then you don't have it.
So he knew I was going to decide. If I know somebody's going to do something, that's still their will. I just know what they're going to do. I'm not making them do it.
Jesse, you're missing the part where he's the creator of all. If I know,
and I'm glad he created me.
If I know how the end of a movie is, then okay, I know how a movie ends. That doesn't mean I controlled the movie. If I am also producer, director, I hand make all of the actors and I write the script and I do all of that, then yes, I did create the end. And you're defending it. Yeah, and you don't have to because none of this makes sense.
I'm not a puppet.
I'm going to pause you. None of this makes sense. And you're defending it anyways. And you're swerving around when we pin you down, as you like that phrase, because this is indefensible. And I think you know that. I think that there's part of you that's wanting to be more honest in this conversation. And that's why you keep skirting away from stuff. It's really scary what it's getting you to defend, though. So, unless Alyssa has something she wants to add on, I feel like we should move on.
No, I mean, I think it's worth reflecting on the points that you brought to us that are contradicted in this entire conversation. Like, really think critically about how insane it is to think that we have a person who has created each one of us with their like divine plan, knowing that there's going to be immense suffering for some individuals, for most individuals on this earth, and then reiterate that this is a person who cares and that created us and gave us free will. It doesn't make any sense. Do we have free will, or was there a divine plan? Like, use some of the critical thought here, because this is the pattern constantly. It's like we hear one thing and then the other, and then one thing and the other, and then it's like, instructions unclear, try again. I don't have anything else to say.
Yeah, same. Okay, well, I'm just gonna end it there. Jesse, thank you. We tried to get somewhere. We didn't. And I wish I had something better to add on to it, but that's all I got. Hey guys, thanks for watching that last clip on Chewed Gum. You can catch us live Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Central Time. And please tell your Christian friends to give us a call and let us know why they believe in God. You can also support us by commenting, liking, and subscribing, and head over to patreon.com/calltheline.